Every parent with a teen could use a little help. Masitete, positive parenting together. And welcome to Masitete, where we have conversations and we try to give you different guides as parents and for teenagers as well. The world is a wild place, and why not have a conversation about it? Here, my name is Keizi. I'm joined by Dr. Hunter as well as Makanaka. And listen, Dr. Hunter, quite a conversation today on this episode we're having.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, so we are going to be delving into safe bodies, healthy choices.
Yes.
Right? It's a very difficult conversation for a lot of parents and teens, especially to have them together. But fortunately for us, we don't have to navigate that alone.
Thank you.
We have we have Dr. Carlota Sekokane, who's here with us. Welcome, and thank you so much for availing yourself to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be part of this conversation. I'm Dr. Carlota Sekokane. I'm right now specializing in family medicine. So that looks like caring for people at all different ages and phases of life, from newborns up until grandparents. And I'm excited to be part of this conversation because I have a huge passion for caring for teens, caring for the youth, and also having conversations such as these that empower patients to feel like they can make safe choices, that they have the information, that they feel non-judged, that they feel, ready to tackle conversations around sex and reproductive health easily.
Love it.
I'm happy, I'm excited to get into it.
Love it, love it, love it. And I just want to dive straight into that. You've mentioned the conversations and having that, and you're passionate about it. You know, for a lot of parents and teenagers, this can be an awkward conversation topic.
Oof.
How do we have those conversations? What are some of the practical tips we can give parents to start having those open conversations that are age appropriate with their teenagers, but also to reduce that awkwardness?
No, I love that, Dr. Hunter. You're right in that it is an awkward and difficult conversation to navigate initially. But I think it needs to start at the why. Why are we having this conversation? Because the reality is that if we don't have these conversations with our teenagers or with our youth, then the world is going to have it with them for us.
Oh, wow.
So the reality is that if we're not creating a safe space where our kids and teenagers are able to come to us and ask these questions, then they're going to ask TikTok. They're going to ask the guy next door. They're going to ask pornography. They could ask any form of social media. And in that moment, we have an opportunity to paint these conversations with love and with nourishment and with support, or hand the mic over to the world to do that. So I'd love to know, maybe from your side, like, what's it been like? Have you found that having these conversations has been easy for you, or do you like steer away from it? What's it been like?
Very much steers away from it. It's a very but awkward conversation to have with adults especially. I found that it's been quite easy to like have it with a fellow peer, but you know, peer to peer isn't always the best way to go. Like it's like blind leading the blind.
I like that. Yeah, you're right. I think it is easier to speak to someone your same age, but it might be also awesome to have an adult that maybe has navigated it before, easing that in with you initially. And I think I like to think of the analogy kind of like sunscreen. Like, you know how you sit and like you don't wait for your child to get the sunburn, the blisters, the red before you start applying the sunscreen. You apply it day by day, little by little, consistently in little bits, in hopes that the day they encounter the sun, they're prevented and safe from the sun.
I don't want to call it a generational curse, but some of us come from a generation where we didn't have these conversations, right? And you say the world will teach you.
100%.
And, you know, I think there definitely is a part of me who's like, aren't you going to learn that in school? You know, you're going to learn it in school in your class. So how do I now, as a parent, I'm dealing with a teenager. They don't necessarily want to come to me and ask me questions. But I'm aware that they're going through puberty and specific changes are happening to their body. Do I, as the parent, say, hey, sit down, let's have a grown cup of coffee?
Wow, okay, easy. That's a heavy weight, though, to say, sit down, let's have a grown cup of coffee.
I'm trying to figure it out.
I hear you, but just as we are also trying to figure it out as parents, they're also trying to figure it out as teenagers. It was such a scary time back then. So I think a way to make it like quite easy and practical is that not making it this huge, weighty one chat, dinner table, let's speak about sex. No, that's tense. I mean, I would also be a bit anxious. So like maybe in little bits, even like while you're driving or while you're watching a movie, you see like someone has cheated on their partner, you can say, listen, that seems like quite a hard thing to go through. What do you think about that? Or like, let's say you hear about someone having fallen pregnant, you can say, you know, oh, that must be tough what she's going through. What do you think about that? Or let's say you see like two people kissing, you can say, oh, that looks so comfortable. I remember it being so awkward for me. What was it like? I mean, have you ever had something like that for you? Or like, you know, having that conversation and being willing to listen more than thinking I need to be the expert in this, just listening and hearing what comes out.
I'm loving that. So it's like, you know, not to make a big deal about this conversation, but to look for entrances into how do we bring this up based on what we are seeing every day. You know, and to make it normal, to normalize it, to make it comfortable and to ease it. I love the sunscreen analogy that you don't have to wait for some big event. You just go slowly through it. So, Makanaka, just from your perspective as a teenager, you know, being in that space, if your parent were to approach you with this conversation, right? I can always see deer in headlights already, right? But is there a way that you would prefer for them to start this conversation with you? You know, like what we've discussed, slower, calmer, maybe not so intense at first, and then almost build that rapport with you before getting deep into the heavy.
Listen, I never had this conversation with my parents. We kind of avoided it as much as possible, and I like it that way. I like that we haven't had to like, yo, listen, sex. If that ever had to happen, I think I'd get up and leave.
Yeah.
It's just so uncomfortable. Like I don't want you to know about what I'm gonna be catching on, and like the same way I wouldn't want to know what my parents are doing. I wouldn't want them to know what I'm doing. But also, it is very important to have that conversation. I understand that, and also we do get taught about it at school, and it's like, I feel like the touch and go that we get at school is enough for me to like go on with what I have. Yeah.
So are you saying, let's say your mom comes and says, oh, that boy is cute. Are you more like, oh, I see what you're saying, mom, or are you more, mom, you're my mom, what are you doing?
Listen, you know when like a kissing scene comes on the screen, I look around the whole room.
Oh, no.
I'm not, it's just weird.
You mentioned the touch and go that happens at school.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when that's first mentioned, there's a lot of confusion for a lot of people, especially if they haven't had those conversations at home. You know? So, I mean, would it have been better for you to have a place where you could go to a parental figure or a trusted grown-up or caregiver, that if you had questions you could ask, you know, rather than just relying on, as you mentioned with your peers, the blind leading the blind?
Yeah. I think, it would have been a bit more better if I had somebody to go to before school. But then again, I've kind of made school like the safe space for me. That's where I go and I learn from. I ask my questions because it's more free. You get to speak freely. And with parents, sometimes it can be a bit difficult to like have an open and honest conversation with them about where you are in life and what you would like to like experience and what you've been up to.
I mean, with what you're saying, Maka, doctor, a big question for me is, when do we start having these conversations? You know, and in a number of episodes that we've had, we've noted that, you know, teenagers are not the same as we were back then. They are a lot quicker, they're a lot smarter, and they're growing a lot faster than what we were. So in today's world, when is it the right time to start, as you mentioned, having those, you know, if a show has a kissing scene, you're like, oh, that looks like a nice thing. When?
I love that question, Casey. I really think the earlier the better, because the reality is that the less we make it the scary, dirty secret, the less they feel like they can't come to parents and trusted figures about these things. So even the same way we speak about our body parts, the same way how we speak about an elbow and a knee is the same way we should speak about vagina, penis, breast, mouth. The same kind of comfort and as early as you introduce those words to your child is as early as we should actually start bringing up these areas and, start speaking about like, hey, I'm noticing this couple, what do you think about this? Just hearing their thoughts will help you gauge like, okay, they're already starting to think about these things. You don't necessarily have to be the expert. Your parent just needs to see, or your teen just needs to see that you're safe to come to, that you're safe to have these conversations with. And that can start as early as like 7, 8, with introducing the names, the parts of our bodies. Shocking, but really.
So, I mean, but what I'm hearing Carlotta say, and I think it's really, really important, is that it's not just about the sex conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about the safe body conversation, and understanding the names of the different body parts, being able to name it, to frame it, to understand it.
Yes.
When you are in a dangerous situation
Yes.
versus a safe situation.
Yes.
And when you are not sure, you can then communicate that in a language that's unambiguous.
Yes.
People can completely understand what you are saying, which makes it a lot safer for you to both communicate danger and understand when you are in danger. So just in terms of practical strategies for the teenager, right, and the parent. So a parent's first priority most of the time, looking after my child.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that my teenager is safe. So how do we introduce these concepts alongside, you mentioned naming, but if we were to frame safe bodies so that people are aware of when you are in a safe versus a dangerous situation, how would you start those conversations, acknowledging that it is linked to sex, but not just about sex?
So I really like that you have like broken it down and said that it's not just about the sex aspect. It's about like, the thing is that in this world, we live in a difficult world, a world where like teenagers are navigating like, who am I? Am I loved? Am I enough? And when we're not receiving that at home, we seek it in other places.
Yes.
And sometimes the way we seek that is in unsafe ways that maybe as a teenager we're not able to realize is unsafe. So as early as it starts as us introducing that these parts of our bodies, the various names, the vagina, the anus, penis, all of these words that aren't taboo, they're part of our body. It's the way we've been created, it's part of our body. As easy as we speak about these words, the more they get comfortable with saying them, the more they can get comfortable with saying things like no, and my no means no, or yes, and my yes means yes. This is my body, I can say, I can take responsibility for my body, I can own my body, I can protect my body and look after my body, and if I'm not sure, I can go to a safe adult. The sooner they feel more confident in that body and in the people around them to help them feel safe, the better. So yeah, it's such a complex thing, but I think it really starts with creating safety in the conversations we have with our youth.
I love that.
I'd love to, yeah.
Doctor, now that I think about it, what makes it so taboo in your opinion?
What makes sex feel so taboo? I think I almost want to say similar to what you'd said. You'd said it was easy talking to a peer or a friend about like sex and things, but now even when you see a kissing scene on the screen, you're like looking every other side, because sex is something that seems to happen behind the closed doors, and then all of a sudden the person's pregnant and no one's really saying how it happened, when I'm now pregnant and it's here, and we're pretending we don't know, like we were pretending we don't know what actually happened here. So without like naming it or naming anything reproductive, naming anything sexual, we're just letting it exist in the dark, and the way we handle those topics is the way we pass it down to our kids and their kids and their kids. They see us not speaking about it, they see us not engaging with it, they see us looking around, so they're like, this is clearly taboo, I'm also not going to look at it, I'm not going to mention it, I'm going to have it behind closed doors. And then they can't even come to their parents speaking about contraception, speaking about, I've met someone, I feel in love with them, but where do I go from here? They're going to get that information elsewhere. So we really are modeling how our kids see these various parts of the
Yeah.
life.
No, so what I'm hearing you say, and then in the complexity
Yeah.
of this conversation, right? The way in which we respond to it is important.
Yeah.
You know, and acknowledging its existence is not the same as endorsing the practice.
No.
Right? And I think parents need to hear that. They need to understand that. You know, having that conversation, having your teenager be aware of the reality does not necessarily mean you are encouraging that behavior. Right? And one of the elements to making them aware of this is prevention. Prevention of sexually transmitted infections, prevention of HIV and AIDS, you know, family planning, making sure you do not fall pregnant until you are ready and it's a choice that you are comfortable with. So having the conversation is one thing. Introducing the elements of prevention is something else. And how would you go about that practically? Acknowledging all the discomfort that we've been exposed to now from the teenager side.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hunter, for that question. And like you were saying, sometimes, especially in like maybe more conservative families as well, they feel like me speaking about prevention is me giving permission. But prevention is not permission, it's protection actually. You're protecting your child from having to do this alone and figure it out alone. And the reality is that it's happening whether we like it or not. They're hearing about it whether we like it or not. So let us be the voice that can like direct that conversation and be proactive instead of passively reacting to when situations arise. So like prevention, yes, looks like the conversations, and protection looks like the conversations, love looks like the conversations and safety, but it also looks like acknowledging that sex is going to happen and how can we make sure that sex happens safely. If and when it happens safely. So that looks like various means. Clinically in medicine, we speak about the huge solid one is condoms. So that is a barrier type of contraception in that it does two things. It prevents against pregnancy, but also prevents against HIV and STDs. So that's something that has a dual function. But usually for young people, we counsel them on something that we call LARCs, which is a long-acting reversible contraception, which means you put it in, you forget about it, you don't have to think about it. So that means like an Implanon that stays there for 3 years. You don't need to think about and remember going back to get a replacement or check-in. An IUCD, you put it in, lasts 5 to 10 years, depending on the model. You put it in, you don't need to think about it again. Versus the strain of a teenager having to go back to the clinic day in, day out for tablets, or month out for an injection that they need to get. That's one way of protection. But additionally, like we said, condoms form a barrier, but then there's another form of protection for STDs or HIV, and that's PrEP. I don't know if, have you heard about PrEP?
Yeah.
You've heard about it? Yeah, 100%. There's like PEP and then there's PrEP, not the shot, but the,
Can you just explain that to us, the PrEP and PEP, for those that are not familiar with it?
Of course, 100%. So PEP is post-exposure prophylaxis. So let's say you've engaged in a sexual activity or you've been exposed to like blood products where someone was HIV positive and you want to prevent against HIV. So you can take a preventative tablet, essentially, that you take for 28 days in the 72 hours after the exposure to take, and that prevents you from acquiring HIV. That's after exposure. But pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is PrEP, is essentially you saying, I know that I'm going to be engaging in sex regularly, or let's say you have a partner that's HIV positive and you are HIV negative, and you want to prevent yourself from even acquiring HIV prior to the exposure, prior to the intercourse, or prior to sharing needles, or whatever the case may be. So you can take pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a tablet as well that you take every day, and that prevents you from getting HIV before the encounter. But now with technology, there's the advent of an injection that you can take twice a year, which is an awesome thing that's coming up soon. So that's PEP and PrEP, essentially.
Incredible.
You know, doctor, I mean, as a parent, you can only do so much. And I love that Maka mentioned that you would consult or maybe speak to your peers about some of your experiences. Now, how do you entrust the peers with this responsibility? Because it's out of your control as a parent. What principles do you hope your teenager would have, although they are consulting their peers on what activities they are engaging in at this stage in their life? Is there any way a parent can be involved in that?
You are directly involved in it from day one until like day last. You're directly involved with them.
Okay.
You're the values that you instill, the morals you instill, whether the conversation is around like sleeping with a person that you love, or whether you're speaking about intimacy that goes to a certain level, whether you are speaking about, you know, drugs, or whatever the topic is, you are instilling a certain conversation with your child that sticks with them in the little bits. And that's why we're saying starting as early as possible with having these conversations, like not making it this huge thing, but having it be a tiny little voice that's lasted their whole life. And then the day it's time to make those decisions, they are acting from a place of, I'm loved, I'm safe, I feel empowered to make this decision, and I can come to my parent and ask them if I'm not sure.
So just, you know, we spoke about, it's difficult for some parents. They're not always the expert. Parents are not the experts in everything. But you're part of a community, right? It takes a village to raise a child. So what are some of those community-based organizations or entities that can help have these conversations or navigate these spaces, like the clinics, like faith-based organizations, non-governmental organizations, or anything like that? Do you have any examples for our parents that are listening?
So there's ample opportunities to have these conversations. Number one, I want to say as well is that by South African law, above the age of 12, a teenager is able to access healthcare services on their own. We always recommend to have that extra that support of a parent or a guardian to support them in those difficult decisions. But as far as accessing medical healthcare services, above the age of 12, they could even go by themselves. And what's amazing is that there's a lot of youth-friendly services. There's Youth Hub that has online counseling, in-person counseling at the Adolescent Center of Excellence. There's crisis centers as well, where something has happened and you want to go to like Mary Strope, so you want to go to like to the Tutuzela Center, that's in a form of crisis. Or let's say you need an emergency contraceptive. So an emergency contraceptive is not the same as a termination of pregnancy. An emergency contraceptive is after you've had intercourse, you want to prevent pregnancy. In those 72 hours afterwards, you take a tablet, and that prevents you from falling pregnant, meaning the egg is not released and can't result in fertility and pregnancy. So those are available at any local clinic, any public local clinic you go to, you can get it for free. Same as condoms as well. But even any private healthcare centers, there's ample clinics that you can go to, and they should be able to give you that service.
Fantastic, thank you.
What a conversation. We're hoping that what started off as something that is uncomfortable is comfortable for you to be able to have a conversation with your teen about. Thank you so much, Doctor. And thank you for watching Masitete. Masitete, positive parenting together.